At the heart of it for me, having taught in both public and private schools, as well as been educated in both of those spaces, and thinking about my current role as a homeschooling mom, I really think that a lot of our kids need critical thinking and independent thinking to be taught. And right now, the way mainstream public schools, especially, are teaching kids is what to think, not how to think. And we're going to turn that on its head with our school, using things like the trivia method, which is this time-tested tradition of learning through grammar, logic, and rhetoric, but also using sort of more trending teaching approaches, such as the Waldorf methodology or the Montessori methodology, including child-led education, unstructured playtime, projects, collaborative projects, and so on and so forth. At the heart of it is we want to teach kids to live in harmony with nature, to teach kids things that they're not going to learn in mainstream schools, like morality, emotional intelligence, permaculture. I like to also share a quote that inspires me every day, and it's from Martin Luther King. You may know it. Folks here may know it already. Those who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those who love war.
All right. My name is Jerry Cabazzuto from theliberationacademy.education. And today I'll be talking about what we're doing at the Liberation Academy. Currently, we have two locations. The first is a pre-K only site in Illinois with our land partner, Misty Friedel, as well as our main pre-K through 12th grade site at Voluntaria, which is an amazing intentional community based on natural law here in Florida. So before I go into that, I'd first like to thank Dr. Dustin Plattner, who is our lead support uh, teacher, infrastructure, architect for the business, for our website, as well as our mental health liaison between our children and families and the academy. I'd also like to thank Sarah Cross, who is our lead online teacher. She will be teaching the trivium to all our fifth grade and up students, which again is a way for us to develop critical thinking with our students so that they can learn how to think, not what to think, through grammar, logic, and rhetoric, otherwise known as input, processing, and output, specifically surrounding history. So as students develop interest in a specific historical event or figure with Sarah, they will be researching that uh, interest topic as well as going through the logic of pouring through that research and then sharing their research in their rhetoric stage in the form of an encyclopedia article, which will be available across Liberation Academy locations, which we're growing. And again, I'd like to thank Voluntaria, especially Chad Cameron, who I've talked to almost every day, and I'm very excited to partner with for our main pre-K through 12th grade site at Voluntaria. I'd also like to thank Misty Friedel, our land partner, who has land not only in Illinois, but as well as in the Panhandle in Florida for a future location. I'd also like to thank my life partner, St. John Penwell Chichester III. He has been invaluable in terms of emotional support as well as technical support, helping us with video editing, as well as with our documentary that we are going to be showing the world so that the Liberation Academy model can be replicated anywhere and everywhere. And his website is artgardens.net. And we will be partnering with Art Gardens to build a food forest as well as an animal sanctuary for turtles and maybe other animals in the future. So before I go into what the Liberation Academy is up to, I'd first like to talk about the old system, or education, quote, as it stands right now. So, as some of us may know, the current education system is based on an old Prussian model which programs future worker bees. Creativity, leadership, entrepreneurship, uh, these things are not emphasized in mainstream public schools, especially. Another emphasis in the current education system as it stands is uh, obeying authority. Children have to raise their hand to go to the bathroom. They're given a schedule, which is mandatory that they follow. While upper grades may have certain elective processes at some school sites, most of it is compliance uh, based. Children aren't given the freedom of their own time, which is the next point. So, unstructured play, for example, is limited to things like recess, quote, which is a very short period of time that kids get to be outside. And especially as kids get older and move into the upper grades, they're not even given a proper recess. Their unstructured time is chunked into just a long lunch period where they get to quickly socialize with their friends and then get back to work. The Common Core curriculum is a one size fits all curriculum in for the United States public schools. It's nationwide and it's based on age-based grade levels. And these standards are not flexible for kids with their own interests and educational journeys they would like to go on. It's very cookie cutter um, for a plan for kids to go into, uh, 2 or 4 year college program. And even then, the statistics bear that many students who go through this curriculum aren't even ready for those types of higher education environments. Again, as mentioned in our promo at the beginning, uh, children are taught what to think, not how to think. They're not given the trivium when they're learning. And so they are basically told to memorize facts as is. Questioning these facts isn't encouraged, and they are to spit those facts back out in a test, especially for subjects like history. In mainstream education, especially public schools, morality, emotional intelligence, care, empathy, these things are not emphasized and are so important if we are to have a free society in the future with our current young people. Things like mental health support, music, art, gardening, these are all considered optional in mainstream public schools. And if there are programs like that, they're often PTA driven, parent teacher association driven. So really it's up to each school community to create and fundraise for these extracurricular activities. Another thing that is emphasized in mainstream education, especially for our students with special needs, is the idea of inclusion rather than belonging. Kids with special needs are plunked into a classroom with potential adult support, yes, maybe not, depending on how their individual education plan is written. And um, they're not encouraged to bear their strengths and abilities and allowing themselves to shine and be part of a bigger group effort. In mainstream education as it stands today, there's a lack of parent involvement. Parents are encouraged to drop off their kid and pick them up at the end of the day. They're not encouraged to hang out in the classroom unless it's for, again, a PTA sort of situation where parents are volunteering for a very short period of time and then they leave. Um, the other issue that I have with education as it stands today is screen time. Now, while I used to have an attitude towards technology that was a bit cautious, I have since realized how important technology is, especially in its role to share truth to the world. And so, while I do recognize the need to teach technology to children, I do think screen time is exposed at an early age in public schools and for long periods of time. Especially for subjects like math, kids are basically given a tablet and they're, pressing a screen to get their answers correct. And there's no, um, it's basically an AI teacher. They're not really uh, given a back and forth question, dynamic teaching experience with that. And that brings me to my next topic, the incoming AI landscape. My question is, what will education look like in the future? We don't want an education where children are just being taught by AI. We want children to enjoy nature. We want them to get sunshine, be exposed to trades, which is my next point. They AI is, uh, I think, a great tool. It can be used for great things. It can be used for not so great things, but it should not be used as a crutch. And this delves into the next point, which is that in mainstream education, there's a lack of emphasis on real world skills. Again, trades such as carpentry, gardening, seamstressing, home economics. What happened to that subject for those that are maybe older and having been educated in America? Some of us may remember home economics. That's out the door. And as children grow and age, they are faced with lifelong debt if they do decide to pursue higher education. And oftentimes, when young people choose their major or degree, it's often in left brained subject areas, economics, computer science, finance. My question is, where's the Renaissance man or woman of today? What happened to the liberal arts and critical thinking? We want to bring that back, that holistic sort of left and right brained mindset to children. And why does the education system persist as it does? Well, I would argue it's because there's a it's how I was taught attitude that people have, which perpetuates this intergenerational trauma. And I do consider education today to be a lowercase t trauma for our children because, again, they're basically forced and coerced into a system that they never asked to be a part of or agreed to be a part of. So, taking a breather, nature is our classroom. And we would like to go back to nature, back to being outside, back to learning from nature. And so I came up with some principles for the Liberation Academy, which guide our pedagogy and an overall approach. The first is that every child is a seed in development. Seeds are whole and only require nurturing to grow into what they're designed to become. I got this from Rudolf Steiner's work, who uh, basically created the Waldorf method of teaching. I also borrowed from various Hermetic principles as well as Bill Mollison's work for these guiding principles for the Liberation Academy. The second uh, principle is that we are a part of nature, not a part. Though society and culture may try to teach us differently, we know in our hearts we are natural beings who live in nature. There is this false dialectic that we're presented with as children, especially, and that is of man versus nature. We want to have children transcend that dialectic and see themselves as a part of nature. This next principle is one of my favorites, and it is that of reap what you sow. As natural humans with a capacity for holistic intelligence, we choose to care to live in harmony with nature or else live with the consequences of our actions. This applies to how we interact with all other natural beings, otherwise known as the law of cause and effect or karma. As we immorally choose to miseducate our children, the consequence of that choice is an enslaved society. And I, for one, choose to actually educate and do the right thing by our kids so that our society in the future, with this growing generation, can be free. Our next principle is that of sustainable yield. Limit what you take to what you need and share in the abundance with others. Choose sustainable and renewable solutions whenever possible. So, for example, the site we have at Voluntaria is going to incorporate uh, renewable energy once we get the funding for that. We're going to be living off the land with our food forest that we're growing and sharing in that abundance through a farmer's market that the kids will be running, and basically offering a program that is free and accessible or low cost to families that want to be part of the Liberation Academies. Nature is the ultimate teacher is our next principle. Stop and observe its patterns, contrasts, cycles, and rhythms. The answer is always within and or in front of us. I basically tried to take as many Hermetic principles as I could and lumped them in here. All this is to say is we can learn a lot from just observing nature around us and drawing lessons from nature. Our next principle, thriving through diversity and adaptability. When we choose a variety of diverse strategies, methods, and resources for the metaphorical gardens of our mind and literal gardens we tend, we reduce our vulnerability to a variety of threats. So, this is why we don't call ourselves a Montessori school or a Sudbury school. We are incorporating methodologies, pedagogical approaches from a variety of sources so that our children can be well equipped to uh, follow whatever educational path and journey they choose. And so this goes into what we like to call the liberation method, which is a unique method based on an eclectic approach, incorporating, as I mentioned, the trivium, which again emphasizes critical thinking, not what to think, but rather how to think, especially with the quadrivium, which is a sister sort of discipline of the trivium, incorporating not just left brained thinking, but also right-brained thinking, especially through things like music, art, etc., so that children can grow into being holistically minded. And I would argue the left-brained system of thinking that is emphasized in mainstream education is responsible for the lack of care, the lack of empathy that we see in our society today. Because when people engage their emotions, their right hemisphere, their bigger picture thinking, they are able to see and care and empathize with the suffering that they see. And there's a reason why the current system is structured in the way that it is. We also incorporate nature's laws, especially through permaculture gardening, so that children can, again, see and learn through nature and learn and incorporate those principles into their daily lives. We also borrow from the Waldorf methodology, which incorporates dramatic play, collaborative learning, storytelling, creative expression, etc., in a sort of home-like environment. We also like to incorporate the Montessori approach, which emphasizes self-reliance, problem solving at one's pace, uh, self-directed learning, and collaborative projects as well. The last principle, and it's one of my favorites, is care for all through one. By first relying on ourselves and tending to our personal responsibilities as far as possible, we can then empower others to care for themselves, for others, and our greater communities. So, as we build a sense of self reliance and responsibility and sovereignty within a child, that child is then best equipped to care for all. That when one suffers, we all suffer. This is so important to emphasize empathy and self love and self care so that we can have a healthier, mentally healthier, emotionally healthier society. And it starts with how we raise our children. So let's talk about the new system that the Liberation Academy brings. So in the new system, there are no worker bees. We are raising sovereign leaders. We want children to have the freedom to chart their own educational journey through child-led learning experiences, and teachers act more as guides, mapping concepts of uh, math, for example, when a child is engaged in something that they like doing, such as gardening. Well, if you want to design a garden plot, let's go over some geometrical concepts. Let's measure out the plot. Let's plan out the perimeter. You can basically take anything the child is doing and teach them academic concepts um, in a hands-on way. This Liberation Academy system that we're creating is going to be decentralized. While there will be a certain level of support for inaugural sites as sites come online, basically, eventually it'll be the online faculty that will be a sort of connecting point between the sites so that the sites can just run themselves in person, and they can call themselves a Liberation Academy or not. Doesn't matter to me, as long as things like natural law, morality, care, empathy, child-led learning are emphasized. And again, we want a holistic uh, thinking mind in the children that we raise. We don't want them just in the left brain. We want them to think with their whole brains. In the new system, children will have freedom of time. We want to maximize unstructured play and encourage autodidactic learning through whatever their interest area is. So there is no specific, short period of time for recess. While, especially as children get older, the time, let's say online, will be limited to a certain, 2 hour period. The rest of the 4 or 5 hour day is going to be spent doing whatever the child wants. And we will offer collaborative projects and invite children if they feel called. But if they're busy working on an art project or writing a research article for a historical event that they're really interested in, let's have them do that. It's up to the child. In the new system that the Liberation Academy is offering, again, we're emphasizing things that are not emphasized in mainstream education, such as morality. What is objectively right and what is objectively wrong? It is wrong to do harm by miseducating children. Again, we are doing harm to the next generations, and we need to take a stand and stop that. It is wrong how we feed our children. If children are growing their own organic food in a food forest, they are getting the opportunity to eat in a healthy way that isn't, uh, you know, their meals aren't full of refined sugars, artificial dyes, processed foods, etc. Again, we want to adopt an eclectic approach so that our children can not just learn about morality and care, but also how to grow a garden, learning from nature's laws, learning about critical thinking through the trivium, and again, the Montessori, Waldorf, and other methods. And again, through critical thinking, our children will be poised to challenge old systems, not just with education, but with things like government, with things like how to run their own business rather than be a worker bee in someone else's. And again, part of the critical thinking uh, sort of trivium, quadrivium grouping is creating a holistic mind, so that we can bring back the Renaissance man or woman of the future, which is basically a liberal arts education. And part of that liberal arts education, again, is an emphasis on things like creativity. So we want children to share and tell stories, uh, be engaged in drama if they feel called, uh, play and perform music, engage in art activities. We also want in the Liberation Academy to emphasize mentorship or a trade apprenticeship with worldwide as well as local experts. So we may have someone who comes in and teaches kids how to ride a horse in person, and then later on that day kids can log in, especially if they're older, and take a synarchy economics class or a French class with one of our teachers around the world. We encourage parent involvement. So, for example, if a family is unable to pay the 750 monthly tuition per child, that's fine. Feel free to volunteer with us, and even if you can afford that tuition, feel free to volunteer with us. We don't want a situation where the child is just dropped off and picked up and um, there's no parent involvement. We want to raise the child with the parents so that eventually parents can feel empowered to uh, teach children themselves and be a guidepost in their own right. We also, again, want the Liberation Academy to be free and accessible to all. This includes the release of our curriculum, which we're refining as we speak, so that anyone can access this type of learning. We also have low cost or free options if families again can't afford the $750 a month tuition or the half day $375 a month tuition for preschoolers. Uh, Wherever families are at economically, we will work with you. The Liberation Academy wants to emphasize and teach self reliance. So if a child feels like giving up or is stuck on uh, problem solving something, we want them to not quit. We want them to work through that difficulty so that they can learn and grow and support them through uh, and build grit basically as obstacles come their way uh, in their learning journeys. And of course, supporting them through dynamic, uh, structured support. We also want to emphasize an ethical living for students rather than compliance to authority. So, again, it's unethical the way we and immoral the way we treat children today in mainstream education, where they have to ask for permission to go to the bathroom. Just go. You don't need to ask for permission for that. You don't need to ask for permission to go outside and get muddy. Feel free to do that. Especially for our kids with special needs, we're going to emphasize belonging rather than inclusion. Whether it's a special needs child or if you're in a mixed age situation and you have a child that's younger, we want all children to bring their strengths and abilities to the table so that collaborative efforts uh, can be made. So, for example, and I like to use this a lot, if we have students running a farm stand, older students, students with more typical abilities, they may be in charge of bookkeeping, let's say, and the younger students or the students with special needs might be in charge of things like greeting or counting how many seeds are left in the inventory, etc. So basically, finding ways to have everyone be part of a collaborative effort. At the Liberation Academy, we believe in screen time at the right time. I have been working in education, both public and private, for over 15 years, as well as having been educated in those systems, both those systems. I really see that as children transition from learning to read into reading to learn, that transition time is around when we should start introducing technology to children. And that's why for fifth grade and up, those are the students that will be accessing our online faculty. Uh, uh, Fourth grade and lower to preschool are going to be in person playing all day with up to and 2 hours, maybe even less of academic time. Uh, and I mentioned this earlier, we want AI to be used as a tool rather than a crutch. I had a conversation recently with some folks where uh, there were questions of, well, can't an AI teach a teacher, teach students? And to that I say, um, we want children to be questioned in a sort of Socratic method so that children can arrive at ideas on their own with independence as much as possible. AI is uh, simply a tool. It's neither good or bad. It's how you wield and use it. And the last thing we want is for children to rely on a single source of information that may or may not prioritize other sources of information correctly, again based on the programming of that AI tool. So we want critical thinking involved. We want children to develop an expertise level so that they can check AI to see if it's correct or not. And so again, we want AI to be used. We embrace that as a tool, but never as a crutch. Finally, this old system that's persisting, this it's how it's always been done attitude, we push that away, we say no to that, and we dare to dream of a new evolutionary education system today with the Liberation Academy. And so we're now enrolling for summer camps at Voluntaria, preschool through 12th grade, as well as for the 2025 to 26 academic year. You can sign up at theliberationacademy.education for our half-day or full-day preschool program in Illinois, or our half-day, full-day preschool through 12th grade program at Voluntaria in Florida. The half-day program is just for our preschoolers who need naps, but other than that, it's a full-day program. We are willing to, again, work with whatever financial situation a family is in. And so for more information, there's my email, Jerry at theliberationacademy.education. We're very excited for families to join us to actually educate the next generation. And we welcome you.